Hello fear seekers, and welcome back to the channel. You've no doubt heard stories about haunted houses, haunted objects, or perhaps even haunted people. But what about being haunted on the job? Today, we're going to be diving into some disturbing, allegedly true, haunted workplace horror stories. Now, it is a dream of mine to read subscriber horror stories. Every like and subscription helps us get closer to that goal as a community. If you have any scary stories from your own life that you feel need to be told, submit them to the email in the description or send them in to me on Twitter. I would be honored to read them. Now without further ado, sit back, try to ignore that feeling that you're being watched, and get ready to ferment your fears. I used to work as a cleaner when I was 16 in between colleges. This is in the UK, so I had already left school. The place I worked was a popular clothing store near my house and built over ancient farmland. Also rumors of druid burial grounds nearby, but that's another story. I've always been sensitive to the paranormal from a very young age, but this was by far the most haunted place I've ever worked, and my first apparition sighting. We were a team of 4 to 5, and all of us were assigned to different parts of the store. One of the sections was the women's fitting rooms. We would vacuum the rugs and cubicles, polish the mirrors, and all of that. You would hear high heels on the tiles the whole time you were down there, and the sounds of rustling paper, coat hangers rattling, etc. There was a general feeling of discomfort and unease, as though you were being followed and watched. This is hours before the store opened, so there were no customers. Sometimes the manager would be there, but they stayed upstairs in the office. The next part was the men's clothing area, which was on the second floor. When you cleaned there, you were alone but for the occasional manager walking through. One time, I was on the floor cleaning the railings by the cash registers, and a huge black shadow swept over me. I was surprised because I hadn't heard anybody approach, and as I looked around, I was completely alone. My cleaning routine was to sweep the floor and collect the dirt into little piles around the pillars, then sweep it all up in one go at the end. The dirt piles moved constantly. I would go back to do the final big sweep and some of the piles had disappeared. After I clocked out, the piles would be there again. I had a sense that the spirit was a young male farmhand, and quite mischievous. I said as much to my coworker, and she told me she refuses to clean that area after polishing the mirrors one day and seeing the disembodied head of a young man peering over her shoulder. Again, there was the sound of coat hangers rattling and shuffling noises, but I never felt threatened by it. I used to laugh it off or tell the spirit to stop, and he would most of the time. Now, after the store was clean, we would clean the staff quarters, toilets and canteen, meeting rooms. The toilets were a non-paranormal horror in themselves. Note, I worked here with my mother. We were assigned to clean the female toilets, and usually if somebody was using them, we would leave and give them privacy until they finished. We went in, and the middle stall was closed, and we heard rustling paper and heavy breathing. So we left and waited. And waited. And waited. The cleaning cupboard was right next to the toilets and didn't even have a door. We would have seen and heard somebody leaving. To leave and enter the toilets, you would have to walk straight past the open doorway and then walk down the corridor that directly faced it. An L-shaped corridor with the toilets on the far end and the cleaning cupboard on the corner. Except when we went in after waiting for 10 to 15 minutes, the middle stall door was wide open and empty. Now on to the apparition. The children's clothing area was generally less creepy. Coat hangers moving again, sometimes things would fall off the shelves and rails, but we shrugged it off. The elevator was directly opposite the children's clothing, and we usually loaded our cleaning equipment into the elevator because it was too heavy to carry up the stairs. I remember rinsing my mop out and I glanced up. There was a little boy around 6 or 7 years old standing directly in front of me. He wore a flat cap, a pale shirt with suspenders, dark shorts, and socks up to his knees. At first I thought it was a mannequin, and when I blinked, he was gone. I thought I was just tired and shook my head. I spoke to my mother about it later, as she is Wiccan and super into the supernatural, and described the boy to her. She had seen the exact same child a few weeks before, but only the back of him like he was walking around a corner. She told me she had the feeling he had died of lung-related sickness, perhaps tuberculosis or pneumonia. So, there you have it. Some of it can be explained by tiredness, I know, but I just thought I'd share this experience here. I have a lot of other experiences, if anybody is interested in hearing them. I'll start this off with a little background. I manage a small box retail store. It's new, 1 year old, and was placed on a property that was used as a parking lot for many years but was originally 6 deeds. It's in an area with other reported and very famous hauntings. A hotel that was on a sci-fi show for being haunted. I first started to notice odd things happening and noises. I brushed them off until one of my employees mentioned something about it. Now they all know, and most refuse to work early mornings or stay late. Whatever this is will bang on the walls, set off anti-theft alarms, knock stuff over, move stuff, and most scary of all, it actually manifested itself into a white semi-transparent figure one time outside the building. I have a photo of this occurrence. I have more questions than answers about this whole situation. However, I can say it's never touched or tried to touch anyone thus far. The store has a strong odor of cat urine that comes and goes, but has absolutely never had a cat, and I've never seen a stray in the area. No rodent activity observed in the building, and the activity can stop for weeks at a time, but comes right back, and sometimes it's bad enough customers will mention something right before close. It's a corporate chain, so no way I can actually get someone in the building to investigate it, sadly. Firstly, wall bangs happen often, and sometimes rhythmically and sometimes random. The building has tin siding, and at times it sounds like someone is dragging their hand down the building, thump, 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 the whole way from one end to the other. Eventually we heard it, and I had one employee stand and listen while I bolted out the door to catch whomever was doing it. I heard, but I couldn't see. Yeah, it was definitely time to call it a night. The times it happens are random, however prominently around midnight, 3 a.m., and 5 a.m. At approximately 3:45 a.m., I was smoking a cigarette before heading into work, and I saw something moving at the back corner of the building. I assumed a deer. I clicked the high beams on and nothing. Click them off, and again I think I see something, so I flip them back on and nothing. I leave them on this time. I thought to myself, I need more coffee. I look back at my phone and finish my cigarette. I look up to a white misty figure standing down the field. I click the cam on and take a few quick shots, and then it disappears. I decided that that was not the day to go in early, and left until daylight. One morning, before the store opened and nobody was in the building, the alarm went off for motion in the register area. Police found nothing. I go in to find a tube of loofahs tipped over. I reviewed the footage, and holy crap! The cam started to flash a little, then boom, the tube falls over seemingly with some force behind it. Wow, first catch on video. Another time, in an area where there are no cameras, the alarm was again tripped for motion on the sales floor. Police found nothing. I entered and found one pack of paper towels on the floor all the way from the top shelf and 8 feet to the left of its original location. Weird. Sometimes random objects are on the floor in the break room. I closed one night and made darn sure everything was far away from being able to fall. I walk in to open, and a drink bottle was standing up in the center of the room on the floor. One morning, while alone at 5 a.m., I hear the anti-theft alarm beep. I walk to the front, and the pots and pans hanging on the back wall rattle and make some noise. I start walking to the door when something whispered in my ear, "Don't go." As I bolted for the door, the anti-theft alarm went off again and sent me into full-on panic mode. One night, while closing down, we propped the restroom doors open because it was very cold that night and heat isn't the best in there. Well, before we left, one of my employees decided to use the bathroom. They walked into the hall and turned around, looked me dead in the eyes, and said, "They are closed." Me knowing full well that that was impossible, I had watched that same employee open them 25 minutes prior. I walked over to see for myself. The door props were still down, but both of the doors were closed. Needless to say, the employee decided to use the outdoors as a restroom and left. I'm not big into this paranormal stuff, and I guess I am looking for some insight as to what the hell is going on. Anyway, it's fun and interesting to see what happens, but it's also extremely freaky, and I think we have all had our fill on this and would like it to pass on. I recently left my old workplace for a new full-time position elsewhere. My old workplace had terrifying entities that would mess with us all the time. This new place is in an old plaza that sits right next to a graveyard. Yippee! If I had have known that, I wouldn't have accepted this position. Last night I was working the closing shift with my manager and another coworker. I had run to the back of the store to use the washroom and had left the two of them at the front of the store stocking product. While I was in the bathroom, I saw the doorknob start to violently shake up and down as if someone on the outside was smacking it. I yelled for my manager to knock it off, assuming it was him because of his penchant for practical jokes. The door handle stopped immediately, so I continued thinking it was him while I finished up. I went out to the front of the store and noticed that both my manager and coworker were engaged in a conversation with a customer. I said, "Hey, you guys need to stop screwing around when there's customers here." Both of them asked what I meant, and I told them what had happened. They both went pale, and my heart sank. They furiously denied being in the back at all within the last 5 minutes. My manager went and grabbed the security footage so we could watch it back. In the footage, you can see me enter the bathroom. You can see the doorknob shake violently for a few seconds, and then you see me leave. No one else was in the footage, and we all felt very unsafe in the space. My manager agreed we could close early to avoid being there later than we had to be. Everything just went downhill from there. I was cashing out a customer when all of a sudden all of the lights turned off in the store. They were off for about a minute while I searched for the light switches. All of the switches were in the off position. I had to turn all the switches back on. Most of the switches were 6 feet from each other on different walls, so it definitely wasn't an electrical problem. The customer I was helping joked that we were haunted and left happy with her items. We all started our closing duties and locked the doors. As my manager and I were in the storage room, we had a large cardboard box filled with heavy product right beside us. While we watched in horror, the box skidded across the entire 5-foot-long table and fell off beside my manager. We both screamed and left the building immediately. We ended up just locking up the store without doing the closing duties as my manager believed we were no longer safe in the store at that point. We have now changed our hours to 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. so that we don't have to be in the store after 10. Hopefully this will help because I have had so many paranormal experiences I can't count them. I think I am bringing bad luck and this entity with me wherever I go because my coworkers had never experienced anything like this before I started working there. Even our CEO won't come into the store anymore because of her experiences there. I work with kids, and the office is comprised of a small computer room, 2 rooms that have sensory toys and other things, a big area we call the rec room, and a gym that is separated from the rest of the space by a door. To get to the main bathroom in the building, we have to go through the gym, down a long hallway, and finally turn left to reach them. The entrance to our office is quite far away from the other businesses using space in the building, so it can be kind of inconvenient when trying to bring your client all the way down to the bathroom. Ever since I started working there, being in that space gives me the worst feeling. It doesn't help that the office isn't the nicest area, so we have to deal with drug activity and crime while trying to keep our kids safe. But there's something more, something else that makes me and a few of my other coworkers uneasy. We have experienced feeling like we're being watched, especially if we have to stay there after dark when the rest of the businesses in the area are closed. We work with the kids after school hours, so sometimes we can work as late as 8 p.m. I have heard noises in the rec room where our toys are located, things like Lego pieces falling out of the bin onto the floor, light-up toys going off on their own, footsteps coming towards the computer room, and whispering. While this can be spooky, I have often tried to reassure myself that some of the things I hear are from elsewhere in the building, or outside. However, there have been 2 instances in particular that I cannot explain away. Firstly, I was in the gym with a client who was riding a tricycle around the room and giggling. I had left the door that connects the rec room to the gym open because I was working alone and I wanted to be able to hear if someone came through the front door. We were having a good day when suddenly I heard a massive crash that sounded like it came from the main sensory toy room, just off of the rec room. The noise sounded like someone was trashing the room, throwing heavy things around and smacking on the walls. This went on for what felt like a while, and my client stopped riding around and stared at the door to the gym, looking scared. I told them to stay where they were and slowly peeked through the door. Nothing. No one was there. Nothing had been knocked over. I went back into the gym to reassure my client, but they started to cry, so I gathered our things and we left. The next experience I have to tell you is more sinister, and has made me genuinely afraid to be there alone. I was working by myself once again at around 6 p.m. It was fully dark out, but there were still a few cars in the parking lot, so I knew I wasn't totally alone in the building. I was wrapping up for the night and went to the bathroom before I left. The bathroom has 2 stalls in it, and to access the room you have to have a key. The door is incredibly heavy, and makes the most obnoxious creaking noise when opened. Picture every scary movie door you've ever seen. Anyway, I was in one of the stalls when the door to the bathroom opened. I heard someone walk in, enter the stall next to me, and close the stall door. I didn't hear any movement from the person after that, but I don't exactly pay much attention to the bathroom activities of other people, so I went about my business. I finished up, left the stall, and noticed that the other stall, the one that I had clearly heard someone enter, was unoccupied. The stall door was wide open, and absolutely no one could have been hiding in there. Not only that, but if the person had left before me, I would have definitely heard the main door to the bathroom open and close. It was the only entrance or exit from the bathroom. I was understandably freaked out, so I washed my hands as fast as I could and left. I turned off the lights and closed the door behind me. A second after the door latched, I heard a massive bang on the door, coming from the inside. It was like someone had kicked it. I took off running down the hallway, grabbed my stuff, and left. Due to the pandemic, I haven't been working in person, so I haven't had to go back to the office yet. But when I do, you can bet I'm never working there alone again. I work in a pharmacy that's located inside a nursing home, and I've been working there for the past 4 years. Just a note to mention, I've had many prior paranormal experiences in my life, but this is still ongoing. I've always felt a presence since the first week I started, but it was never anything that made me feel threatened. Things didn't really start happening until last year when I started talking to my coworkers about feeling a presence and asking if that was something that they've experienced as well. The day after I had a conversation with my coworker, I was working a night shift. On our night shifts, it's only one technician and a pharmacist. I was sitting in the back counter at my computer when I thought I saw someone come through the door. We're usually not busy at night, but there's the odd time that one of the nurses will come down for a bag of chips or a pop. I got up from where I was seated and walked over to where our cash register was, and from there you can see the pop coolers and the chip racks. I didn't see anyone, so I left and walked back and forth looking down the aisles. Nobody was there. I asked my coworker if he had seen anyone come in, and he said no, but I was 99% sure someone had walked through the door. I didn't think much of it. It was late, and I decided I was probably just overtired. I sat back down in my chair and started filing prescriptions. About 25 minutes later, I looked up and saw a pack of toilet paper slowly moving forward to the edge of the shelf, before it dropped on the ground, startling me. There's absolutely no way it could have just been our air system or a draft that knocked it off. My coworker saw this and thought it was odd too. I told him it was a spirit that had moved it, and he looked at me like I had 5 heads. So, to prove my point, I brought up the security camera footage. On the video, you can see 2 bright and fairly large orbs moving around as the toilet paper was being pushed. I showed it to him, and there was no denying that it was a spirit trying to make itself known. That was my first significant paranormal experience at the pharmacy. We have had things go missing only to find them in the strangest of places. For example, my car keys went missing one day from my locker, only for me to find them in with the prescription vials. My coworkers all swore up and down that nobody had hid them there, and I most definitely didn't. Things are always falling off of the shelves, and sometimes they're heavy items, not just something light like the toilet paper incident. We had a 5-kilogram jug of Epsom salts crash on the ground and break open, and nobody was remotely close to the aisle. Many of my coworkers and I see what looks like someone walking by out of the corner of our eye, only to realize no customers are in the store. We also hear what sounds like the door to the front entrance open and close, and nobody will be entering the store. This happens multiple times a day sometimes. The only time I've ever felt threatened or scared so far was when I was working the night shift and got locked in the bathroom. It very well could have been a hardware malfunction, but I don't believe it was. The handle locked from the inside, and I don't normally lock it anyways. I did my business, flushed the toilet, and washed my hands. I went to walk out the seemingly unlocked door, and it felt like it was being held shut from the other side. I figured it was just my coworker messing with me, so I started yelling his name, that it wasn't funny, and to let me out. The handle started moving as if someone was on the other side wiggling it. I yelled again for my coworker, and he must have finally heard me because I could hear his footsteps. He asked what was wrong and then pulled open the door with ease. He's now finally starting to believe that I wasn't crazy and this place actually had some paranormal activity going on. I have lots of other stories if anyone is interested. Please let me know. Hey guys, first time sharing here. I've had several experiences over the course of my life, and I figured I'd just send them all here for your enjoyment. I'll try to break them into shorter paragraphs for easier reading. I'm going to try and go in chronological order just to keep myself organized. These all occurred over several years, my entire life really, and multiple houses since my parents never owned a house and we moved fairly frequently. I'm sure there are reasonable explanations for a lot of these, but it's fun to share anyway and see what others think. The first paranormal experience I had is one I don't remember, but one my parents speak of often. When I was young, like most kids my age, I was obsessed with Barney, so my parents decided to get me a talking Barney doll for one of my birthdays. My parents still lovingly referred to this doll as the Barney doll from hell, because it had a tendency to talk when it logically shouldn't have. Nobody would push the button, and it would still talk. My parents even tried taking out the batteries because they were tired of hearing it talk, and surprise, it just kept talking. I have vague memories of playing with this doll, but can remember nothing weird about it. I also had an imaginary friend as a child. Her name was Zuzu, and I played with her for years. As an adult, I've had someone point out the similarity between Zuzu and Zozo, and, as much as that freaks me out, I don't ever remember feeling scared while with Zuzu. There is one distinct memory I have of playing with Zuzu where, like most children obsessed with Harry Potter, I had found a large stick and was pretending I was riding a broomstick. I remember leaving enough space for Zuzu to ride behind me on the broom. At one point, I remember glancing down at the ground and the shadow showed two distinct figures on the stick, as if there was really another person riding behind me, despite Zuzu being imaginary. When I was in high school, the activities seemed to ramp up a bit. I remember at night when I would be in bed, I always had to sleep with the TV on because complete darkness freaked me out. I used to sleep facing the wall, and I would frequently see shadows crossing the light from the TV and blocking out the light on the wall, as if someone was walking around my room despite me being the only one in there. There was another occurrence, my freshman year of high school. I was showering in my mom's bathroom and heard the bathroom door open and close, and saw a shadow pass by the shower door. I assumed my mom had just come in to get ready or grab something from the medicine cabinet and thought nothing of it, but when I heard nothing else for another minute, I called out, "Mom?" and got no response. I opened the shower door and found nobody in the bathroom. I had only heard the bathroom door once, so I had assumed she would still be in there. When I was done showering, I asked my mom if she had come in, and she said nobody had gone in the bathroom since I got in the shower. Also, while in high school, I played with the Ouija board once with a friend. Let's call this friend Kayla. Nothing scary happened, but we did get a response from a spirit that said it had been following me since I was a child. I am still friends with the woman I played with, and trust her when she says she did not push the planchette. While in college, I got a job at a local office supply store. This entire story gets a little confusing, so I'll say I worked at two locations in my town. Store 6307 and Store 6612. I was hired at 6307 originally and met my boyfriend there. Eventually, 6307 was closed and I transferred to 6612. My boyfriend had also previously worked at 6612 before he and I met. This is relevant, I promise. After transferring to 6612, weird things definitely happened while working there. Things would fly off the shelves fairly often. It's common when pegs are overfilled for things to fall off, but product would literally fly off the shelves and land on the other side of the aisle. I got hit in the back one time by a pack of Sharpies this way when my manager, we'll call her Dawn, and I were the only two in the aisle, and she was standing in front of me, nowhere near the Sharpies. The product had to fly a good 3 to 4 feet out in order to hit me. I remember my manager being super freaked out, saying the product literally just flew off the peg at me. Often while recovering on closing shifts, I would be the only one on the floor, with the manager in the office doing the closing duties. I would walk through the aisles in numerical order, cleaning as I went, and would commonly find items in later aisles that needed to be returned to previous ones, only to find aisles that I had already fixed were thrashed again despite me being the only person on the sales floor. One time, I found a stack of coloring books sitting on the floor in the center of an aisle I had already cleaned, even though they hadn't been there just a minute earlier when I had come through that aisle. Another time, my manager and I were working on stocking a new pallet display when we heard a voice right between us. There was only like a 3 or 4 inch gap. We were very close to each other. I tried to rationalize that it was just one of our phones or mobile devices making noise, but my manager didn't seem convinced, and later experiences make me look back on this and wonder as well. Voices were a common occurrence in this store, but they were almost always faint and easy to rationalize away. I actually got Kayla a job there, the same woman I had played the Ouija board with in high school. At first things were great, but she suddenly quit with no notice, going as far as asking me to bring her glasses because she had forgotten them at the store and didn't want to return. When I asked her why she had left, it wasn't like her to just bail like that, and I wanted to make sure nobody had harassed her or made her uncomfortable or anything. She told me that she felt like the place was haunted and it just got too overwhelming and she felt like she couldn't be there anymore. So much so that she wouldn't even return to grab the glasses she had forgotten. I definitely understood what she meant about that feeling, especially in the receiving area where we kept our furniture stock and received deliveries. I worked on the logistics crew, meaning I was frequently there either early mornings or late at night. The lights worked automatically, but they only turned on an hour before opening and they turned off an hour after closing. In order to turn them back on, we had to walk all the way through the dark store and receiving area and flip a switch. We had to do this every 2 hours, as the lights would turn off again after that amount of time, so overnight shifts were fun. In order to reach the switch, we had to walk down a corridor with tall shelves on both sides that reached up to the ceilings, and I remember every time I made that walk in the dark, it always felt like someone was watching me, and almost like something was going to pounce on me from the top of the shelves. The most distinct experience I had at that store, though, was while working an overnight shift. It was me, my manager Don, and 2 other coworkers. We'll call them Jim and Greg. Jim and Greg had decided to go out front of the store for a break. Dawn let them out, locked the door behind them, and came back to the aisle where she and I were working on resetting a planogram. A couple minutes later, we heard a loud voice call, "Hello?" from the front of the store. It sounded high-pitched, almost like a woman or a child. Dawn and I immediately looked at each other and she said, "Did you hear that?" And I said, "Yeah." And so we got up and went to investigate. I'll be honest, I thought the guys had met some girl and were bringing her in to try and impress her that they had access to the store so late. It was like 2 in the morning, so this was somewhat unlikely, but the voice was so absolutely clear it didn't even occur to me that it wasn't a real person. When we got to the front of the store, however, there was nobody around, and this was when we remembered Dawn had locked the door when we let the guys out, so there was no way they could have brought someone else in. To be safe, we opened the door and asked if anyone had come in, but they obviously said no. Dawn even had to unlock the door to ask them. She told them what we heard, which is how I know she heard the same thing I did. We searched the rest of the store but couldn't find anyone or anything that could have caused this. All the doors were locked, and we always turned the volume on the radio all the way down so we didn't have to listen to the corporate music all night. When I got home, I told my boyfriend about what had happened, and he told me a story from when he used to work at the same store. He had been working an opening shift, and it was just him and another manager in the store. They were both hanging out in the manager's office just talking before starting work, when they heard laughter from out on the sales floor. They went to check it out but couldn't find anyone in the store. Again, all the doors were locked and they were the only ones there at the time. My boyfriend is skeptical about paranormal stuff, but he admits he can't explain this occurrence. Just after I graduated from college, my boyfriend and I were planning on moving out of our first apartment. Granted, it was a stressful time. One night, about 2 weeks before we moved out, I suffered what I suppose could be called sleep paralysis, but I wasn't paralyzed. I guess it could be sleep hallucinations, maybe? I woke up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, a common occurrence. I sat up and swung my legs out and rested my feet on the floor, but before I got up I realized there was a dark shadow in the corner. It looked like a person, but completely black. The outline was very distinct and detailed though, to the point that I could see the shape of the hair. Even when I looked over my shoulder directly at it, it was still visible. Just standing there completely still, looking right at me. I froze, just staring for a few moments before I slowly laid back into bed, terrified, and having given up on the bathroom, eventually fell back asleep. The next night, the same thing happened, but there were multiple shadow people. Again, I wound up just getting back into bed and eventually falling back asleep. Every night for the next 2 weeks before we moved, I woke up and saw more and more shadow people in the room. By our last night in the apartment, the bedroom was completely full of figures. That night, I woke up and recognized the figure from the first night standing directly next to my bed and looking down at me. Again, none of them moved or did anything, even when I looked directly at them. By this point, I was so exhausted from barely sleeping for the past 2 weeks that I said out loud, "I'm getting pretty sick of this stuff," turned my back to the shadow figure, and went back to sleep. Looking back, I can't believe I did that, but I was just so tired and wanted to get some rest. It's very possible that this was just sleep paralysis, but I think it's worth mentioning I'd never suffered from sleep paralysis before that point, and I haven't had it again in the 3 years since. I don't know why, maybe I was just bored and antsy with lockdown, but during the beginning months of COVID quarantine, I decided to break out the Ouija board again. I know it's stupid, but I did it anyway. Again, I don't really know why. I played with it several times by myself, getting various responses but nothing super noteworthy, but I did notice occasionally the planchette would seem like it was making patterns or trying to push off the board. I know this is a bad sign, so every time this happened I would immediately push the cursor to goodbye. The last time I used the board, I decided to audio record the session on my phone as well. The cursor started making patterns again, and I guess I had a morbid curiosity so I didn't stop it. The cursor began pushing towards the edge of the board, but before it reached the edge, it felt like something else stopped it. It wasn't me, but it felt like another force was pushing the cursor down into the board. The cursor then moved on its own to goodbye, before slowly moving away and moving back to goodbye. Over and over again. I eventually asked, "Does this mean I should stop?" Nothing happened with the Ouija board, but when I listened to the audio recording later, I heard a response that, to me, sounded like a voice saying yes. I didn't hear anything else on the rest of the audio recording. I was home alone and all my dogs were outside at the time, so I don't know what else could have made this sound. I now currently work at another office supply store as a supervisor. I usually work closing shifts and have realized that there are rumors amongst the staff of hauntings at the store. Maybe ghosts just really like pens and notebooks, I don't know. During closing shifts, there are often sounds from out on the floor even when nobody is there, like somebody is moving product around. Frequently, we'll all be up at the front of the store about to leave for the night when we'll hear sounds from the sales floor, like somebody is slamming stuff around in the back. When this happens, my response is usually, "Nope," and I just put in my code and we leave for the night. We always do checks when we officially close to make sure no customers are left in the store, so when every staff member is at the front, we know there's nobody out there, despite the sounds. I've heard from staff that they've seen things. They refer to the ghost as a him, saying things like, "Oh, there he is," or "Don't acknowledge him," or "Oh, he's mad," when we hear stuff, but I've never seen anything. Occasionally, the bathroom door will refuse to open, despite us putting in the code and nobody being in there. This was actually the reason I first heard about the supposed haunting. I was walking down the hallway past the bathroom when an associate was trying, and failing, to open the door to clean it after closing. She tried 3 times before giving up and moving to the other bathroom first, muttering, "I hate this store. I swear it's haunted." I honestly just thought it was the locks failing, and still think that's likely. But then the noises after close were brought up, and it's a bit more difficult to ignore those. I know this was super long, but I've never put it all out there at once like this. There have also been other, smaller occurrences throughout my life, but we'd be here forever if I listed every little thing. I'll update again if anything interesting happens. Until then, thanks for those of you who stuck around for what amounts to basically an essay. Hey guys, glad to see you made it to the end of the video. One of the first places I ever worked was a restaurant that became a tourist attraction due to paranormal happenings. But that's a story for another time. If you have any stories from your own life, feel free to submit them to the email in the description, or to the official Fermented Fears Twitter account. Alright guys, that just about wraps up the video. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. So long, Fear Seekers. I'll see you in the next video.